episode of Inside the Capitol from the Minnesota Catholic Conference. I'm Jason Adkins.
And I'm Maggee.
And we're bringing you the news of what's going on in our Minnesota State Capitol. It's the second week of the legislative session. Already so much is going on. Maggee and I and our team, including Matt Hughes, we're busy talking to legislators about all kinds of issues impacting human dignity and the common good, from the child tax credit to gambling expansion to non-public pupil aids, about which we'll say more next week in next week's edition. But this week we wanted to highlight one of the ways in which lobbyists, including lobbyists for our Minnesota Catholic Conference, add value to the legislative process. And that's by educating members. There are thousands of bills introduced every year. No one can possibly be on top of all the issues. So legislators, our elected officials, really rely on lobbyists and those advocates associated with them to inform them about the issues. That's why you want to be a credible witness and a credible advocate, because they rely on us so much for information about key issues. And oftentimes what we'll do is bring in subject matter experts to talk about them. One of the issues that we've been working on, a couple issues, related issues for years, assisted reproduction and stopping the legalization of a commercial surrogacy market here. We're grateful to have one of our friends, Jennifer Lau, and her associate, Callie Fell, from the Center for Bioethics and Culture with us this week to talk with legislators about assisted reproductive technology, but also restorative reproductive medicine and how to properly address infertility. Maggee, say a little bit more about Jennifer and Callie and their visits and what happened this week.
Yeah, it was such an excellent week. We had Jennifer and Callie here for 2 days to primarily talk with legislators. We did some group events with legislators, but then had time to talk with a lot of legislators one-on-one. We probably met with at least 30 different legislators, meeting with people on both sides of the aisle, and really educating them on surrogacy and IVF and other assisted reproductive technologies, as Jason said. And I think one of the, last week we talked about all the different dynamics of the legislative session, who's showing up and all that. One of the benefits of this session, especially in a tie that it's given us, is little space to educate. We're not running maybe at quite the same pace we have been the last few years. And so legislators feel like they have a little breathing room and they can actually soak up what an issue all has to offer. And so that's what we've been able to do the last 2 days with Jennifer and Callie, working with our friends at the Minnesota Family Council. And then we also had a pro-life doctor, local pro-life doctor here, who spoke on restorative reproductive medicine, and just as an alternative, as a better path forward than just offering IVF as the solution for young couples struggling with infertility, but really looking at, is there something else going on in the body that we can explore first, and maybe that will take care of it and be cheaper and a healthier option for the women. So those were the sorts of conversations we were having over at the Capitol the last 2 days.
And why are these discussions timely? Well, almost for a number of years, including last year, one or both houses has legalized a commercial surrogacy framework in Minnesota. Currently, there's no legal framework for surrogacy. We believe surrogacy contracts are void as a matter of public policy. Courts have no duty to enforce those surrogacy contracts. So the industry goes to the legislature and says, regulate us, but really what they want them to do is create a legal framework so those contracts will be honored, and this big fertility, the surrogacy industry, will be able to grow here in Minnesota. We've been able to stop that year after year, and we're trying to continue to stop that, and that's what we're asking legislators to do, is say no to a commercial surrogacy market here in Minnesota, and in fact embrace a ban on commercial and surrogacy. Right. We're against the buying and selling of children. Women are not for rent and children are not for sale. But there's also a mandate on IVF. Say a little bit more about that, Maggee.
Yeah, there was, again, the last few years, they've really tried to push an insurance mandate that would cover IVF. The one that they've been running would not include a religious exemption, so we would all be forced to pay for practices that we don't agree with, that we view as unethical or not the best path forward for women and for couples. So we've been opposing that, but really, again, having some credible witnesses here to speak to why those things are wrong. Especially one of the things they've talked a lot about the last few days is just all of the health effects and health impacts when you engage technology into the process of conceiving and developing a human life. And you can hear more about that on a longer video as well that we'll have linked probably right here. Can you guys tell us a little bit, why should we have concerns, ethical, moral concerns about these topics in general?
Well, as a nurse, my biggest concern is maternal child health. And I think the data is pretty clear that these technologies are not without risk to both women and children. And those risks are short-term, they're long-term, they're financial risks, they're exploitative risks that the women exposed to doing all kinds of things mandated by contracts. And I just think that that's not in the best interest of maternal child health.
Right.
We've been letting a multi-billion-dollar industry call the shots, and it's about time they be held accountable, whether through reporting of accurate data, whether it's through good research, which again, Jennifer just said, we're already seeing that this is risks to maternal and fetal health and medicine, and I think it's time we hold them accountable.
You can watch the full episode linked through
Yeah,
this.
to hear about all those negative impacts, they really dive into why it's wrong and give you more of a framework for that.
Yeah, so if we're going to mandate coverage of IVF, then at minimum we should mandate coverage for restorative reproductive medicine, which insurance often doesn't cover right now. So we need to be going upstream and treating the root causes of infertility. So we're grateful to have our friends from the Center for Bioethics and Culture, but it's also a big week. Obviously, it's the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, now the duly departed Roe v. Wade, but still the March for Life continues. And Maggie, you were really proactive this week speaking to high school students about the pro-life cause.
Yeah, the Archdiocese had a big gathering over at one of the Catholic schools here in St. Paul, and had schools come from all over the diocese to learn about the impact of life and what students can do. There was a lot of energy in the room. They did a Eucharistic procession over to the Capitol, so it was just a really packed day. I spoke at it, so did Callie, who we were just talking about. She spoke on IVF. I spoke on why it's important to get involved in politics. One of the things I talked about and we talk about here at the Catholic Conference is that the law is a teacher, and the law really helps shape what culture is like. And so if we want to have a pro-life culture, we have to look at the laws as well. So that's, it was just a really great morning, really edifying. Had some good questions from the students who came up afterwards, and
Now's the time to double down on the cause for life, because although there might be gains nationally on the abortion issue, Roe v. Wade being overturned, abortion being banned at some stage in many states, unfortunately in Minnesota in 2023 and 2024, we went from a pro-choice state to a pro-abortion state. So all the safeguards were removed, funding was cut for positive alternatives, we had the PRO Act, the Protect Reproductive Options Act enacted. So just as it took 50 years to undo Roe v. Wade, maybe it's going to take 50 years to undo this abortion regime in Minnesota, but the work begins now.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Maggie, for connecting with high school students on that and nurturing the next generation of pro-life advocates. Speaking of the March for Life, we are blessed to have Bishop Kenney here at the Capitol today on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade to pray over the House. Our legislatures, not just in Minnesota, but in Congress, have a tradition of opening their sessions in prayer, precisely because we've always understood, whether we want to admit it these days or not, that we need to seek divine assistance and wisdom in how we govern, because laws should govern for the common good, not the special interest, and we need to seek prayer and guidance from Almighty God as we do that. So Bishop Kenney delivered a beautiful prayer this morning opening our legislative session, and it's really important that our church leaders, our priests, and our bishops take a part in that process to bless the legislature and ensure that the Catholic community they know that the Catholic community is praying for them and supporting for them regardless Republican or Democrat. So we're all one Minnesota, as they say, working for the common good. So we want to highlight an opportunity for you to pray for our state, our monthly First Friday Adoration at the Capitol, coming up again February 7th.
Yeah, it's so just such a, again, edifying experience to come pray at the Capitol. It's really easy to get to the room. If you RSVP, we'll get you a parking permit to park right in our lot. And I really encourage schools or churches to adopt the hour. We had one last month, adopted an hour. They brought a bunch of people from their church over and prayed for our legislators, prayed for all the issues that we're working on, and really asking God to come into this space. So I encourage you to fill a car, bring some fellow parishioners, bring a bus, what have you, over and come pray with us at the Capitol next month.
We're delighted to learn that the Diocese of New Ulm is going to be sending folks up in April for First Friday Adoration, and Bishop Zielinski will be there all day. So anyone can do it. People are making tremendous efforts to make it here to pray for our state, intercede for our elected officials, and help honor our Lord in this space, which is still His dominion and part of his kingdom. So thanks again for joining us on this episode of Inside the Capitol. We'll be back again next week to talk about more issues on which we're working and what's going on at our state legislature. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.